Mom, Dad, I humbly suggest you save some money and shop Amazon for back to school. It's for my growth, meaning my body's growing at an alarming rate. And clothes you buy me this year will be very small very soon. Plus, the clothes I love today will be out of style tomorrow. But at least your wallet doesn't have to be my fashion victim if you shop low prices for school at Amazon. Hopefully this is helpful. Amazon. Spend less, smile more.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today I'm going to talk about what empathy really looks like and how to be more empathic, especially if a partner has asked you to do this, or you have gotten feedback from your kids, or from when they're old enough to say something like this, or from coworkers or friends, or honestly, people that are told that they're not empathic. It comes from all quarters. So how can you recognize this? Why might it be the case? And how can you work on it is going to be the focus of today's episode. And before we get there, please do subscribe, because I just did some more of my bonus episodes, and so you're going to like those. I have like 40 by now. I have ones about sex, I have ones about relationships, I have ones about everything. The most recent one was men who feel that everyone thinks their wife is out of their league, and I've had ones on other aspects of anxious attachment and all sorts of other attachment styles. Not all sorts, there's like 2 others. Okay, so subscribe, and please also join my Facebook group. It's really fun. There are a lot of interesting threads, and it's away from the prying eyes of people that you know, so that you can actually talk about things that are of interest to you. Anyhow, so what is empathy? Empathy is perspective taking. It's when you can take somebody else's perspective and really put yourself in their shoes. So it is not sympathy. I mean, sympathy is better than nothing. So sympathy is when you feel bad for someone. You feel like, oh, that really sucks, for that poor person. But you can't really empathize what it's like to be that person. So what's an example of the difference between the two? So let's take a common scenario where in a couple, one partner experiences depression. So this is common. There's a lot of women that experience depression, a lot of men too, but more women. So I more frequently get women in my office that feel that their husband does not understand what their depression is like and all of the ways it manifests. So sympathy would be, my poor wife, she's depressed. I can't understand what the hell that's like. I guess, it sucks though. And that's better than somebody who, for example, says, man, I don't even think depression is real. Like, I think those people just ought to get off their ass and do something, which, I see some of that too, but it's couched in more flowery phrases. But, and of course, that's not real. That's not true. But anyway, so empathy would be, my wife is depressed. That feels like she is really hopeless and fatigued and stuck. If I were my wife and I was feeling that way, I could see how all of these other behaviors of my wife make sense. I can deeply imagine what it's like to be my wife, and that's terrible. And from kind of putting myself in her shoes, I can almost figure out what she would want me to do. So there is a world, men especially are like, I'm not a mind reader. How am I supposed to know what she wants me to do? If you're empathic, you kind of become a mind reader. And there's actually a word, empath, that means basically a highly sensitive person that's really good at putting themselves in other people's position. You can't really just decide to become this, but you can practice this muscle of empathizing. And people who struggle with empathy really did not grow up in very empathic homes. So they grew up in homes where people were very judgmental, where people were cold, critical. For example, a man who says that, man, my wife is depressed. I have no goddamn idea what that's like. And sometimes I just think she just got to get off her ass a little bit more. That guy, there's no way he was raised in an empathic home where a mother, for example, read books with him and said, oh, what is Johnny feeling in this book? Or even told the kid what she herself was feeling about anything, unless it was better than someone else who is weak, So when you grow up in a house and everything is competitive, cold, told, there's no emotions really discussed, then you do not practice empathy. Because it's not adaptive in your family of origin. You would be considered a pussy, quite honestly. If your mother was reading you a book, not that such things go on frequently in homes with not a lot of closeness, but let's say you were still young enough, your mother's reading you a book, and it's Little House on the Prairie and the horse died, right? And you burst into tears. In homes that are not comfortable with emotion, your mother would get very uncomfortable right then. And she'd be like, it's just a book. Like, it's not real. Probably didn't happen. Let's move on. And so then you learn, like, you were feeling deep empathy with Laura and Mary or whatever, and then the horse that died, or maybe for the horse itself, And, but that wasn't liked. It wasn't responded to well. It was dismissed. It was kind of condescended to, and your mother seemed a little disgusted. So, and that's the mother. The mothers are usually the more empathic. Women are more often caretakers, have estrogen instead of testosterone. So the dads in those families where men are raised to be unempathic, they're frequently even worse. They wouldn't know a feeling if it smacked them in the face. And this is, of course, due to their family of origin experiences. Nobody's blaming anybody. Everybody can be understood within their own context. But if you get a man that was raised to be scared of emotions because if he experiences any, they're condescended to, it's kind of gross, honestly, and it really doesn't have a place in his childhood, and nobody ever helps him learn how to empathize with anybody else through sharing their own emotions. I've written a post about how mothers can help their sons understand women later on by sharing their own emotions in real time. Either way, like they don't have any practice with this. So then one day they get married and their wife is like, I'm feeling so bad because, my friend came over and I think that she judged the house and I think that she thought that I'm such a fuck up because we had all these dishes in the sink. And this guy is going to say something like, what are you talking about? She doesn't give a shit about our dishes. You make yourself upset for no reason. And he's genuinely going to think he's being helpful. He's going to think he's adding value, a different perspective, and that if she was just confronted with this intel that he's providing her, which quite honestly is most likely true, is the bitter irony of it for him, it's probably true that the woman didn't give a shit about the dishes in the sink. But the way that he says it is basically like shaming her for having an emotion, and there's zero empathy. Now, guys who do a little bit better have sympathy. They're like, my wife's upset about some crazy shit again. I guess I got to go over and say, I love you. It's okay. I'm sure it's okay. All right, fine. This is better. But this is not where you want to end. This is not the end result of your self-development as a human being. You want to be empathic. Maybe you could be like, my wife, why is she so upset about what I think is this crazy thing? Oh, let's think about it. She devotes herself completely to the house. This house is like her career. Women seem to think that the home decoration is very important. If I was a woman, I would probably think then that the home decoration is very important. Maybe this is like if my boss came over and my computer was up and I had like 15 browser windows on CNN and the New York Times and not one thing for work. And I was like, oh my God, he must think that I'm such a, waste and maybe I'm going to get fired. Maybe that's how she thinks about that this woman's not going to be her friend anymore because her friend looked into the sink and saw that she's not supposedly now a good housekeeper. So maybe I can empathize that she's very anxious and feels ashamed and embarrassed. Now, if you were raised in an empathic home, this stuff is second nature. You don't articulate it. You don't have to go through all of this in your head. But just like any other skill that you learn, when you don't know how to do it, you got to start out very low level and it takes a long time and it feels very mechanical and fake. And then eventually it doesn't feel fake anymore. So remember learning to change a diaper, that felt very strange and weird and like that would probably have to take everybody 10 minutes a time. And then over time, it takes you 2 seconds to do, right? So it's the same sort of thing. And I say that because like so many people, especially men, never changed a diaper before they had a baby. So it certainly did seem weird the first time, I'm sure. So if you want to get better at empathy, you got to practice. And thankfully, if you're in a relationship or even if you're not, there are human beings around you, family members, kids, wife, coworkers, whatever. They're all around you all the time. If nobody's around you, then you don't have any use for empathy, probably. So if there are any relationships in your life, pick something that you've previously found it difficult to empathize with and try to get better at it. What could be an example? So there's plenty of women who are unempathic, who are raised in unempathic homes as well. So what's my favorite one to talk about? One of my favorite, the sex issue, right? So if a woman cannot empathize with a man with her high sex drive husband's need for physical touch, then what is she doing? That's not being a good partner, not being able to empathize. It's interesting because now if we look at the sympathy one, the sympathy gets a man kind of this like vaguely condescending, patronizing sexual encounter. So she's like, man, I don't get why he wants to have sex so much. Must be some guy thing. I don't fucking know. But, all right, honey, come here. Let's do it. I have until 10:15. Let's go. And this is going to be better slightly than him jerking off himself, but really not much. And that is a sympathetic person. She feels like he has this completely not understandable need. And I guess she'll do it. Crazy shit, guess she'll do it. But that is not trying to be empathic. That's not saying like, what is something that I need very much? It must be like that for him with the physical touch. What do I need? Oh, I need him to be sweet to me, or to be polite, or to remember my birthday, or to get the car's oil changed, or to rub my feet, or to cook dinner, or whatever the hell he does that you like. Or maybe he doesn't do any of it. Then you can really understand. Because you can be like, man, the amount that I yearn for him to be nicer must be the amount that he yearns for me to be sexual. So that's when you get into empathy. So what is empathy? It's perspective taking from putting yourself into that person's shoes. And frequently, at least if you're exercising the muscle at first, it's going to require saying, what do I feel like that about? Oh, it must be something like that. And I have a post on this. What do you struggle with that could help you understand your partner's struggles? And if your answer is you don't struggle with anything, then you gotta go get evaluated for some narcissistic traits, because everybody struggles with something. And whatever you struggle with, a struggle is something you're trying to do, but you can't get there. You're trying to be this thing, but you can't get there. You're trying to access this from another person, but you can't get it. Whatever the hell it is, you can therefore, even if you just have one thing that you struggle with, which of course you don't, you have myriad things being a human, then even if you just had one though, you could use that one as a mental extrapolation point for all other empathy in the world, right? You only need to want to do one thing that you have a hard time doing, and you can therefore understand everybody's struggles. So if you use enough empathy, if you really deeply dig deep, because you were not trained this way, again, remember, so it's not really your fault. You're learning a new skill. It would be like trying to learn to eat healthy if you were raised just eating like junk food all the time. You're not going to know. Other people are going to be like, oh, I made a salad. You're going to be like, what the fuck is in a salad, man? I don't even know that. And honestly, this sort of thing is actually very helped by therapy, because when people grow up in dysfunctional families, they have no idea what normal is. So a therapist can really help you with that, because now in the age of Google, it sounds stupid, but in the age of Google, it's actually easier for people. So they could literally Google something like WikiHow salad. Like, what the hell is in a salad? If you were somebody who was raised making their own Hot Pockets all the time because your parents were kind of MIA and you never saw a vegetable, you could be like, how to cook a vegetable. Whereas previously, in the age prior to the internet, when people didn't know basic life skills, they had to go to find books or find a mentor of some sort, or watch other people carefully like an anthropologist. And, it's a lot harder. So that's something that the age of the internet has done that is good, in addition to dating apps, which is how I met my husband. So anyway, but the thing is in therapy, you could say something like, my wife tells me to be empathic. I literally have no idea what she means. I think I'm being empathic. Man, I do everything she doesn't want to do. I make money. I come home. I take care of the kids. She still has a problem. She's upset with something or other. I don't fucking know what I'm supposed to say at all. And if you have the balls to say this, then you can really right away start learning. The problem is that many people feel so deeply ashamed of their inability to make a spouse happy and to connect with their spouse that they become very defensive. And instead of hearing when the wife is like, you don't know how I feel or you don't understand me, they say stuff like, well, what the hell should I understand? God damn it, that's not a problem at all. And let me tell you the reasons that your feelings are invalid. And, obviously that works about as well as you can imagine, which is not at all. So if you have received feedback from anybody, and this includes children, as they get older, children may be like, you don't listen to me, daddy or mommy. Or as they're even older than that, they may say things like, as I discussed in the podcast on when your child believes things that are different than your own belief system, they may start to say stuff like, you're always invalidating me. You don't respect me. You don't respect my opinion. Why can't you live my own life? Why can't you respect me as an adult? Why can't you ever, say that you learned something from me for a change? Or why if I'm, like I have clients that are like literally a doctor and the parent will go on WebMD, instead of ask the child about their physical ailments. This is textbook lack of empathy. Even if the parent was never going to do what the child said, it is unempathic to not realize how insulting that would be. So if you're dealing with either an adult child, a spouse, coworker, friend, whatever, if anybody has said, you don't understand me, you're not a good listener, that's like code for you're unempathic, or anything like that, or if your interpersonal interactions just go to shit, and or if you're frequently confused by people, like you think y'all are just shooting the shit, and then somebody bursts into tears, or somebody stops being your friend, or you get a bad work evaluation, or somebody says you're one of your kids says something that just totally blows you out of the water, like, you've never really listened to me, when I was a kid, something that you don't think reflects reality. Instead of buckling down and becoming even more defensive, which always hurts the interaction and the relationship and the person more, what you need to do is think, maybe I'm just bad at empathy, and maybe I need to work on it. Maybe I need to work on genuinely saying, okay, the thing that's hard for this person must be somewhat like how I feel with this other thing that's hard for me. Now, don't go down this crazy rabbit hole that some people with the narcissistic traits do, which is saying, all the stuff in the past. Like all of the things that they could remember struggling with are in the past. It's like a job interview answer. When the job interviewer says, like classically would say, what do you struggle with? And the person says, well, I used to be too perfectionistic, but now I really have much more balance. It's like, first of all, fuck you. Like definitely you have more stuff than that. And that's not even a real one. That's like a good one, even if it didn't go away. And also you're situating it in the past. So while this may have been a good way to answer job interview in the 90s before people were like cognizant of emotion more, it's not anymore, A, because people want you to be more authentic at work, and B, especially interpersonally, you're not going to get anywhere by saying, well, I'm thinking about stuff I'm bad at, and like, for example, I used to be bad at golf, so I did what any smart person would do. I got better at it, and I got myself a golf pro, and I started to take lessons, and I really, watched all these videos on it, and now, man, I'm in, whatever the hell it is, the Masters, is that what it is? I don't think it's Wimbledon. I think it's the Masters. But either way, it's like, oh, give me a break. Like you don't currently have something you struggle with. If you can't currently think of something right now that you struggle with, then you need to do some deeper digging. The number one thing that anybody in this situation struggles with is, guess what? Connecting to others. So you might say, you know how I guess it must be like when I'm trying so hard to connect to my wife, I think I'm saying the right thing, and then she's so mad at me. It must be that frustration and sadness must be how she feels when she says blah, blah, blah to me, and then, this exact situation. As frustrated as I feel with her, she must feel that way with me for not understanding her, and, etc. So really, if you struggle with empathy, the main points to get out of this are situated in your family of origin and understand that this is a difficult thing to learn if you never learned it in the home. If it had been an ambient part of your home atmosphere, it would not be something that you struggle with now. This is not to blame anybody, but just to give you a larger view so that you can say, oh, wow, like this is something that I'm going to need to learn because I didn't get it, and then to say, what do I struggle with so that I can then deeply understand how other people struggle without coming off as defensive, minimizing, self-aggrandizing, condescending, or whatever other wonderful monikers I've been given over the years. And even if you think it's only your crazy spouse that thinks you're unempathic, man, it never is. It really never is. And if you procreated with this crazy spouse that you think is so crazy, there's a good chance that at least some of your children are going to think the same thing as they think about you when they're older. They're going to be the ones who say, you never listened to me. So this can be another motivator because most people value very much the relationship ongoing with their children. All right, so hopefully you got something out of this, and please do subscribe if my podcast adds value to your life, and immediately forthwith go and figure out what you struggle with that you are going to use as your extrapolation point when other people struggle and it's called upon you to empathize.